Hi, friends. We are going to be talking about demons, demon lords, and the abyss today, and that is super exciting. I can't believe that we're finally having the stream. I have talked about this in the past. I personally specialize in lore about like demons and demon lords in Pathfinder, and it is so incredibly exciting to have this chance to talk about this. So we are going to go ahead and dive right on into it. Before we get started talking about demon lords, I wanted people to actually understand what they are and what sort of creatures they basically come from. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the abyss and to talk about death just a little bit more than I have before. But basically, what you need to know is that the abyss is a place of infinite chaotic evil. It, like hell, is one of the lower planes, which is the unholy trinity of places that the souls of evil people go when they die. It appears to be functionally infinite and could very possibly be actually infinite, which is in and of itself super interesting to a lot of people. It is home to three big types of extraplanar entities, at least: demons and quiplots, which we have talked about in the past, and daemon dads, which are the hitherto unmentioned creations of Thanatanic Titans. Titans themselves are the ancient ancestors of giants. They created the Gigas, who created the giants, and the term Thanathanic Titans refers to a specific brand of Titan that waged war against the gods, were defeated, and were sealed in the abyss. While they were sealed in the abyss, also, hey Jessica, it's super exciting to see you. I do have a new different shirt, which is kind of wild. And yes, there is even more beard than last time. We all know it. It's me. But the Thanatanic Titans were defeated, and they were sealed largely in the abyssal plane of Oligir, which is the home of the demon lord Orcus, which we will talk about for 2 seconds later on in the stream. He's a very interesting demon lord and is one of the trio of big bad demon lords in D&D, but is not very important in Pathfinder. The Thanathanic Titans, which is a term that I'm having a difficult time pronouncing, wanted to mimic the successes of the gods. The gods had created mortals, and the Thanatanic Titans were just like, that looks cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to like bleed a little. We're going to shape some abyssal clay, use our blood, and then I think use like a little bit of the water of the river Styx. And we're going to create super sexy creations of our own because we're cool, evil, sexy guys. And any things that we create, hey, Daryl, I hope you're having a good time. Any things that we create are probably going to be evil, cool, and sexy too. And they created the first daemon dads. And the first daemon dads actually were like super hot creatures for like 2 minutes. And then they quickly deteriorated and became the sort of evil creatures that they are now. But they were still loyal to the Thanathanic Titans. And the Titans were just like, fuck it, we'll go with this. Eventually we'll succeed. And right now, as of 2nd edition, most Thanatanic Titans, God, I can't say that word, most Thanatonic Titans are currently vibing in the abyss. It's very difficult for them to escape. Most of them are vibing in Oligir, which is Orcus's realm, and a lot of them serve Orcus, but some of them don't serve Orcus and are actually waging war on those that do, or fighting each other just because they're not very organized. But that is the very bare basics of the abyss. It's an infinite place of evil. There's presumably an infinite number of lairs. There's some interesting Rovagug lore that we'll talk about in a different stream that talks about the abyss. There's also some interesting Quiploc lore that talks about the abyss that we'll talk about at a later date. But basically, it's an infinite place of chaotic evil, and if you go there, you're probably not going to have a great time unless you're a demon. And even if you're a demon, you're probably not going to have a great time. You probably should be at least a demon lord if you want to be able to vibe in the abyss, and even then, that's not enough. Demon lords are constantly fighting each other, and we're going to talk about that later on. But basically, if you are immortal in the great beyond and you die and you are a chaotic evil asshole and you go to the River of Souls, you are judged by Pharasma and you are told that you're going to go to the abyss. If you go to the abyss, you are going to become a creature that is known as a petitioner. Becoming a petitioner is the fate of all, not of all, but of most souls that die and enter one of the outer sphere lairs. Lair's planes, one of the outer sphere planes. I said a weird word instead of saying plane. But as we talked about before, the 3 lower planes are Abaddon, Hell, and the Abyss. Today we're talking about the Abyss. We've talked about Hell in the past. Odds are the next stream we'll probably talk about Daemon, so we'll talk about Abaddon when we do that. That's a time for a different thing. Once you're there, you become a petitioner, and your body is made of quintessence, which is the stuff that composes everything in the outer spheres. And once your body is made of quintessence, the exact form that you take on depends on the lair that the plane that you're living in. I said lair again. I'm going to be saying lair a lot later on, which is the reason why I'm saying that so far. We are going to talk about daemons and demons. They are different. Daemons are older than demons. I think the naming conventions here are dumb. Hey, Adam. Also, even though daemons in the lore are older than demons, demons in the games are older than the daemons for some reason, just because it doesn't make any fucking sense. We're also going to talk about weird lore continuity stuff later on for one specific demon lord who is really weird. There are old demons. Some of the oldest demons are somewhere between tens of thousands to possibly even millions of years old. We've had a conversation on the Discord the other day about like the age of Galarian and how incredibly unclear it is how old the universe is. But if you become a larvae, if you become a petitioner in the abyss, you become a creature that is known as a larvae. Specifically an abyssal larvae. Abyssal larvae are massive, like dog-sized maggots that vibe in the abyss and that just eats anything that they can. If they survive long enough, they undergo another apotheosis and they become demons, which is one of the big things we're going to talk about in this stream. We're not going to talk about regular demons. I just entered dark mode. So Rovagug spawn are not demons. Those are Quiploc. And we've mentioned them previously. There's like one specific brand of Quiploc that like lives on Rovagug and just eats whatever he like discards. But yeah, so basically, if you want to become a demon lord, the most basic way to do it is to be immortal, to die, to get your soul judged, or to go immediately to the abyss and become a demon, which is a possibility that we'll talk about in a second. Become a demon after becoming a petitioner, and then eventually become a demon lord. And becoming a demon lord is a challenge. One of the biggest reasons why it's a challenge is that you have to take over a lair of the abyss, which is in and of itself not an easy thing to do. And also, I really like Big Evil Beetle Dude too. Rovagug is very interesting. But one of the problems with the process of being a larvae and then becoming a demon is that abyssal larvae are ingredients in powerful, vile, evil magic. And also, they are delicious, apparently, according to demons, daemons, and in some cases, devils. So basically, if you are a larvae, it is entirely possible that a more powerful demon, which could even be a dretch, one of the weakest kinds of demons, will see you and will want to eat you. So you can see how that would be a challenge, especially because abyssal larvae are not very powerful themselves. They are typically weaker than the weakest demons. And they'll bite things that try to bother them. But even though they're massive maggots, they're not very dangerous. If you are a mortal who is somehow in the abyss, odds are you could kill an abyssal larvae by yourself. Unless you were just a normal-ass person and you happen to be in the abyss, which is the case if you are someone who is a victim of Zora or of Giselda, who are two specific demon lords who really like preying on mortal villages, and they will abduct entire villages into their realms, so that way their followers, which are vampires and werewolves respectively, can go and just fuck them up. It's really annoying. I do think also, Daryl, I think it's weird that there is a requirement for demon lords to take over a lair, but yes, that is what inspired the requirements for Althos in my story, that if he wants to be a demon lord, he has to take over an abyssal lair. In D&D, it's actually not super necessary to take over a lair to be a demon lord. It's just that most demon lords have lairs. Some of them in some editions of D&D actually don't. Frazulubru, who is the demon lord of lies, deception, and summoning, in some editions of D&D, specifically the first edition that he appeared in, was actually not a demon lord with a lair, even though in his lore he actually did have a lair originally, but it got yoinked from him when he got summoned to the world of Greyhawk. That's some D&D lore in this Pathfinder stream. But yeah, if you're an abyssal larvae and you're allowed to vibe for long enough, you will become a demon. Probably the other and probably the best way to become a demon, if you're like a mortal and you're just like, all right, I want to be a demon lord of something, probably the best way to achieve that apotheosis is to actually become what's known as a demonac, which is just it's just a fusion of the words demon and maniac. And it's someone who worships a specific demon lord, gives that demon lord their souls, lives long enough, and then is killed, and then upon their death they are given immediately over to the demon lord that they worshipped in life, and they are able to become a demon immediately. It's also possible to become a half demon and then when you die become a demon, but that's a whole other process. If you're a demonac, that is like a class in Pathfinder 1e. That's one of Pathfinder's prestige classes. It's talked about in some lore books, and it's talked about in the Book of the Damned, which is the best way. The difference in power between a demon lord and evil gods in Pathfinder is a demon lord is a demigod, or it's at least a demigod level entity, and a true evil god is just infinitely above that. A single true evil god could probably fight off multiple demon lords at once. There is one minor exception to that, which we'll talk about when we get to the section where we're talking about specific demon lords, which we're actually about to do. Demon lords are the apex of demon kind. Every single demon lord is unique. I've talked about this before, but generally speaking, the majority of demon lords, and there are an infinite number of demon lords because there's an infinite number of abyssal lairs, every single one of them is a unique demon, and the majority of them can be assumed to have once been mortals who died, probably became petitioners, but didn't necessarily have to, became demons, and then eventually acquired the power to take over an abyssal lair and become a true demon lord. There are a couple of like really big steps along the way. Most creatures who became demon lords probably spent some time as a Balor, which is the most powerful normal demon, and then as a Balor Lord, which is basically Balor plus like a few additional powers. And then they became a nascent demon lord, which is a unique demon, and it's like typically the weakest kind of unique demon. And a nascent demon lord is a demon lord who has everything but generally control over an abyssal lair. The abyss is itself an intelligent, sentient creature, and I'm using the word creature really loosely here. But basically, like, the abyssal lairs are themselves intelligent and kind of alive, and you have to have the power to subjugate a lair of the abyss to your control so that you can prove that you are deserving of being a demon lord. It's entirely possible that once you have done that, the abyss will just recognize you and give you that final push in power. But there is a significant difference in power between even the weakest demon lord and a nascent demon lord. There are also cases where someone can be a demon lord and then they can be demoted from being a demon lord into being a nascent demon lord. The only instance that I can think of this happening like in text is the case of Sithud versus Sithud, whose name I'm going to put in the comment in a section. I'm going to put in the chat section in a second. My English for a second was bad there. But Sithud was a demon lord of cold and frozen shit. And I think of like also betrayal, who got his ass destroyed by Koishchi, who was that demon lord whose name I can't say, the one that was once a human, who got his soul yoinked from him by Baba Yaga, and then who fled from Baba Yaga. That demon lord went into the abyss, started gaining allies, started making enemies, and fought Sithhood in Sithhood's lair, and then defeated Sithhood and stole enough power from that demon lord to become a demon lord himself. I'm going to go ahead and put Sithhood's name in this. There you go. It is now in the chat section, so that way y'all can see it. Hey, Capri. But yeah, so there are important exceptions to that rule about most demon lords beginning their lives as mortals. I actually can't remember exactly what Sithhood's like domains were. It's entirely possible that it was. I knew it was like the cold, frozen stuff, and then like something else. It might have been betrayal or exiles. I can't remember what it is now. But yeah, there are important exceptions to the idea that generally speaking, if you are a demon lord, you started your life off as immortal, you died, all that sort of stuff. One of the really big exceptions, probably the most important exception in like Galarian's history, is that of Dascari, who is the demon lord of locusts, infestations, and chasms. He was a hated enemy of Aradin, and he is the force behind the World Wound, which is a thing that existed in first edition and does not exist in second edition. But it was basically a abyssal rift that connected the abyss and the world of Galarian. And his actual origins is that Pazuzu, who is a very prominent demon lord, one of the more powerful ones, and a hated enemy of Lamashtu, mated with either an enormous abyssal insect or an enormous abyssal insect demon. And the child that was born was Dascari, who was born as a unique sort of true demon. Please don't use the Force. But even for Dascari, who was born as a unique demon and probably from the moment he was born had the power of a nascent demon lord, even Dascari had to take over an abyssal lair to become a true demon lord, which suggests that the abyss is always watching and that the abyss is one of the factors that determines how powerful an individual demon becomes, which is in and of itself very interesting to me. One of the other exceptions, and probably the most common exception to the general rule of you're immortal, you die, you become a demon, you become a demon lord, are the Quiploc Lords. We've talked about the Quiplocs enough that y'all probably know their origin. If you're here, you've been in my other live streams. They were the original inhabitants of the Abyss. If you're really interested in like the super history of their origins, they were born basically when the Abyss was born, and when the Abyss was first delved into by the Proteans, which were some of the first beings in all of existence. Then the Quiplocs were already there. There was a big war between the Quiplocs and the Proteans, even though the Proteans weren't exactly hostile towards the Quiplocs, but the Quiplocs were just like, we hate all life. We're going to kill anything that's not like us. And this was actually one of the things that gave the universe enough time to not be a chaotic mess, because the Proteans lived in a place known as the Maelstrom, which is, I think it's one of the outer layers, but I might be wrong. It's a lair for chaotic beings, and the Proteans themselves are outsiders of chaos and different alignments. Some of them are good, some of them are evil, but most of them are just chaotic neutral. They are what demons are, but for chaos. And they were keeping the universe a chaotic, swirling mess. While they were fighting was when some of the first Quiploc Lords began to exist, and eventually the Quiploc Lords kicked them out of the Abyss, and then the Quiplocs were kicked out of the Maelstrom, and there was just a sort of like stalemate that developed between the two sides. And now we're going to talk about the Quiploc Lords. The Quiploc Lords that converted into Demon Lords are another really important exception to the idea that like you're mortal, you die, you become demon, you become demon lord. The ones that we know of that are now demon lords that were once Quiploc lords are Dagon, who is the demon lord of deformity and sea monsters, Mazmaz, the demon lord of bindings and vermin, Yehodrius, whose name is dumb enough that I should probably put it in the comment section just so people can see how it's spelled, because goodness, I don't think I pronounced it correctly. Yehodrius, who is the demon lord of worms, age, and time, Jubilex, whose name I will also put in the comment section, the demon lord of poison, oozes, and slimes, Kaithoth, Vosug, who is the demon lord of fungi, diseases, and parasites. This is Jesus. God, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this name. This name, who is the demon lord of caverns, reptiles, and troglodytes, and probably others that just haven't been mentioned / created by the good people over at Paizo just yet. But those are converted Quiploc lords, as in creatures who were at one point Quiploc lords and who then became demon lords. We know how that process works because of Kaithoth, whose name I probably just butchered. I can't pronounce it, but we know how that process generally works because of that asshole, because in that asshole's entry in the Book of the Damned, which is both a like in-game book that exists and also a real-life resource that people can use to find out about demons and other evil outsiders, it talks about this process explicitly. And what it says about the process is that Kaithoth noticed that some of its more powerful demonic enemies were creatures who were answering prayers by mortals and were gaining power from their worshippers. Because as they answered prayers, they became beings that were like gods and they gained additional power. Kaithoth was able to fight them off, but he began to grow tired and he began to grow curious about their source of power. So he started sending his consciousness into the mortal realm, and he started meeting mortals, and he started answering their prayers, and they became worshippers of his. He started gaining this power, and at first he was still a Quiploc lord, but over time he began to feel greed, and he began to want more and more mortal worshippers, which eventually converted him into a demon lord. We can probably assume that this is consistent across the experiences of the other former Quiploc lords that are now demon lords. It's also worth noting that some Quiploc lords do have worshippers. Yamasoth, the polymorph plague, which is one of the more well-known Quiploc lords, does have mortal worshippers and is still a Quiploc lord. Some people in universe actually think that he has undergone the same process that Kaithoth underwent, and that he has become a nascent demon lord, which in lore is stated to be incorrect and apparently something that pisses him off. But yeah, the other kind of weird exception to the rule of you should be immortal, die, become a demon, then become a demon lord is possibly the children of Lamashtu. Quiploc lords are not weaker than demon lords, but they have like a different sort of power. And generally speaking, waves of demons and possibly a demon lord or two appear to be enough to like beat them down and cause them to retreat. Yamasoth, the polymorph plague, is the Quiploc lord who is like who is in the highest abyssal lair, as in the one that's like the most close to the rest of the universe. And interestingly enough, despite that, he's actually not the strongest of the Quiploc lords. When we do a Quiploc lord stream, which we will do eventually, I'm going to talk about them individually, and I'm going to talk about like their different power levels, so that way people can understand them a lot better. They're actually like pretty important figures in the lore, so it's kind of odd that I haven't talked about them that much yet. But that's only if you're interested in like the deep lore of Pathfinder, which enough people are that I could easily talk about that sort of thing. But yeah, I would actually argue that probably on a 1-to-1 level, they appear to be stronger, because Kaithoth was able to fight off a lot of ancient demon lords, or at least a lot of ancient nascent demon lords by itself before it started being like, I wonder how those creatures are gaining their powers. I should investigate them more. And then boom, became a demon lord itself by accident. But Lamash 2, who I've talked about a handful of times, is the like true goddess and ascended demon lord who is still a demon lord of monsters, motherhood, and madness. And she has had lots of different children. Odds are she's probably had billions of different types of children. She mates with basically like anything that she can mate with, and she likes creating new monsters. She doesn't always have to mate to do this, but some of the creatures that she's created, presumably through mating, and in the cases of the creatures we're going to be talking about, objectively through mating, like it's stated in lore, are actually demon lords. And some of them were the first members of entirely unique races. One example of the entirely unique races that she gave birth to are the Gnolls, which are just hyena humanoids in Pathfinder. They're also creatures that exist in D&D. Most people probably know them through D&D. They're really similar to how they are in Pathfinder and D&D, except for instead of worshipping Yeniganu, who is a demon lord in D&D and not in Pathfinder, they are worshippers of Lamash 2 and also Robogug sometimes. So Daryl just asked, being a Quiploc Lord, then becoming a demon lord makes you more powerful. That can be assumed, although there's only a handful of examples of that are actually like really solid. Dagon is one of the more powerful demon lords, and Dagon was a Quiploc Lord who became a demon lord. And Kaithoth Vasung is also a solidly powerful demon lord who was a Quiploc Lord and then became a demon lord. So yeah, that can be assumed. I don't know if that's always going to be the case, and we probably shouldn't assume that it will. But Lamash 2 herself is a demon lord who is also a god, and she has at least 2 children who have become unique demon lords themselves. The first one of them is Aldanak, she of the 6 Venoms, and then Aaresh Kagal, who is the demon lord of greed and riddles. And if you read the Book of the Damned, in Aaresh Kagal's entry, it states that she is similar and has similarities to the outer god Natharolep, who is one of H.P. Lovecraft's creations. He's the Black Pharaoh, and he's the central character. He's one of the central characters in the story where some person meets him, goes insane, and then starts like joining his army to take over the world or something. But Natharolep is a creature who exists in both Lovecraft lore and also in Pathfinder. And he is one of the outer gods, so he is one of those who remain. And he is one of the weird creatures outside of reality that's just vibing. I love how Jessica just comes in and she's like, are we doing another Lovecraft conversation? Hate it here. But Aaresh Kagal, who has... Aaresh Kagal has many similarities to Natharolep, including like both being, this was in Generation 1. A lot of the stuff we're talking about is in Generation 1. Second edition hasn't actually changed that much of the lore. It's changed lore specifically with Nocula, who in first edition was a demon lord, in second edition is a true goddess and also not a demon lord. She's changed alignments, and she appears to no longer have her abyssal lair. So that's one of the only like super huge changes to demon lore. That's a thing that can happen, even though it was known that demons can be redeemed and can stop being evil. It wasn't known that demon lords were also capable of being redeemed and stop being evil. So that's really interesting. But Natharolep and Aaresh Kagal has lots of entries that are like really similar. They have lots of icons that are similar. They're both really weird, like Egyptian pharaoh people. And there's lots of similarities between the two. The reason why this is really weird, Hazel, is that Aaresh Kagal was stated to have a former mortal life, which is unique because one of the other demon lords who was the child of a true demon and a demon lord was Daskari, who did not have a mortal life. Daskari was just born a demon. So this is just a continuity thing that's really weird. If Aaresh Kagal was both the child of Lamashtu who became a demon lord, then she was probably the child of Lamashtu who was born as a mortal or some type of creature that can die and go to the great beyond, go to the River of Souls, which is not what demons do when they die. Demons are a different type of entity, and if a demon dies, they reform in the abyss, or they're destroyed forever, or they're trapped. There's magic that can kill a demon and then just trap it in a place. So there's just lots of different things that are really weird there. We are going to talk about the 7 deadly sins for a hot second, because there are demon lords that are affiliated with the 7 deadly sins. In first edition, the demon lords that are affiliated with 7 deadly sins are Shax, the demon lord of murder, lies, and envy; Exorbion, the demon lord of gargoyles, ruins, and the lord of gluttony; Aaresh Kagal, who we just talked about, the demon lord of riddles and mysteries and greed; Nocula, who is the reason why I mentioned first edition a second ago, the demon lord of succubi, lust, and assassins; Soko Benethoth, who is Noctula's brother, and also sometimes they did the incest together, because of course they did. The demon lord of perversion, pride, and taboos; Jubilex, the former Quiploc, who is now a demon lord, who is the lord of oozes, sloth, and poison; and Orcus, the demon lord of wrath, necromancy, and undeath. As I mentioned before, and as people are already saying in the chat section, Nocula was redeemed. Nocula was served by a nascent demon lord named Shamira, who was Noctula's most powerful servant. She is a special type of succubi who is essentially a succubi plus. And at least in first edition, she was a nascent demon lord. She has not been mentioned in second edition yet, at least as far as I have read, though she probably will be Nocula's replacement. She probably will take over the Midnight Islands, which is the name. It's either the name or like really close to the name of Noctula's former realm and abyssal lair. And when she does that, boom, she's a demon lord. Now she's the demon lord of lust. The other person who's probably a really good contender for the demon lord of lust would probably be Soko Benethoth, who is just a lust demon lord, who also is very proud. And the main reason why he wasn't the demon lord of lust was probably just because they didn't want to have someone who was the lord of 2 things. Dumb. But yeah, we have now hit the main point where we've done talking about like the big lore stuff. Now we're going to talk about the more fun stuff. We're going to talk about like the demon lords that I personally am super into. We're going to take time, and eventually we're going to talk about like all of the demon lords that have been talked about in lore, but we're not going to do that in one stream. Unless we did a stream that was like 5 hours long, we wouldn't be able to do all of that in one stream. So yikes. But now, worth noting, demon lords are demigod level entities. They are probably the strongest creatures that you could fight at the end of even a mythic campaign. And with that, there are some demon lords that have stat blocks. If you really want to see stat blocks of demon lords, including like HP and unique abilities, the thing that you should read is the Wrath of the Righteous adventure path, which is the World Wound adventure path. I'm saying that's kind of a spoiler, but I've talked about this before. That's also the adventure path that includes like Noctula and stuff. So if you're into demons and you're just like, Luciano talking about demons has made me want to do demon stuff, then you should play the Wrath of the Righteous. You should find a game master who's like, I'm going to do a Wrath of the Righteous run, and we're going to do it together. Now we're going to talk about like the big 3 demon lords that I'm super into. We're going to start off with the demon lord Flarios. Flarios is the demon lord of fire, volcanoes, and salamanders. He is an enormous serpent-like motherfucker. I would call him more salamander-like, but he has legs, and salamanders and Pathfinder don't have legs, even though salamanders in real life do have legs. I think all of the salamanders that I can think of have legs in real life, so who knows. Flarios has I actually managed to distract myself for a second there. You'll love to see it. Flarios has a lot of really cool skin that like has lava bubbling underneath it, and sometimes his skin cracks and open and lava like oozes out of it, but it's fine. He gets better a second later, and any like holes that open up on his skin close up again. He has an enormous maw of shark-like teeth. He can breathe smoke, magma, and fire. And he has a really cool spear made of obsidian that is capable of impaling a giant, and that anytime he wants to, he can just shapeshift it into a whip made of lava. He is worshipped by some salamanders, though his like biggest enemy is Ymiri, the evil elemental lord of flame, who also covets the worship of salamanders. He's worshipped by pyromaniacs, pyromancers, and more than a few red dragons, and also some drow who are just like, you know, it's really sexy making swords. Sometimes I say things so dumb that I just need to take a second. The lair that he rules over, I'm going to answer that in just a second, Daryl. There is a like in-universe reason why they wouldn't work together. He rules over like a massive field of volcano and fire known as the Bloodpyre Fields. He has a castle made of adamantium in the caldera of the largest volcano, and not far from it is the lair of the red dragon named Fengasma, who's a great rim red dragon, which means that she is like probably close to demigoddess level in power herself. She's also widely believed by demonologists to be Flarios' lover, and it's believed that sometimes they will have fiendish red dragons together. So the reason why they wouldn't work together, Daryl, is because apparently Flarios once tried to court Ymiri, and Ymiri shot him down. This is what's believed by Ymirians, the people who worship Ymiri. And the people who worship Ymiri include people like evil druids, salamanders, though not the majority of salamanders, and also pyromaniacs and arsonists who don't really feel like worshiping Flarios. Ymiri lives in the elemental plane of fire, and she is also a demigoddess level entity. She's just a different kind of demigoddess level entity. There are 4 different elemental planes. These elemental planes all intersect and like vibe with each other and sometimes clash. And all 4 of them have an evil elemental lord and a good elemental lord. In first edition Pathfinder, only the evil elemental lords existed and were like usable by players unless you made a campaign where you rescued one of the good elemental lords. But in second edition, there is one good elemental lord who was able to escape. I can't remember exactly which one off the top of my head. When we talk about the elemental planes, we'll get into that in a second. Though there also was a just generic demigoddess of fire who is in both Pathfinder and in Starfinder, who is the mother of Ragthiel and was also the former maid of Despater. So it seems like there's just different elemental gods and goddesses whenever Pathfinder needs a generic new god or goddess that no one's ever heard of. The consistency is annoying to someone like me who dives deep into the lore. But yeah, Flarios is a very cool creature. Flarios, unfortunately, does not have stats that I have seen. If you want to be a really cool worshiper of Flarios, you can get cool powers like the ability to set people on fire and make them explode. I think Flarios is very valid and very rad. I wish Flarios got more love, like in universe and in game. Unfortunately, Flarios is considered a minor demon lord, at least of the people of Galarian. Major and minor demon lords are not exactly like as cut and dry as you would think. Generally speaking, most of the resources that are written in Pathfinder that we have as game masters and players are written from the point of view of someone who's in Galarian. And all of the adventure paths so far have at least started in Galarian, with one really weird exception. The Tyrant's Grasp adventure path does not start in Galarian. It starts somewhere else. If I talk about that later, that'd probably be a spoiler, but it does not start in Galarian. It just moves there very quickly. So the next demon lord that we are going to talk about is Shax, the demon lord of envy, lies, and murder. He lives in Charnelhome, which is an abyssal lair that is a massive house that is filled with gigantic rooms where countless prisoners are being tortured by either Shax or his worshippers and servants. The most famous creations of Shax, and one of the reasons why Shax is like pretty important in terms of lore, are the Babaus, which are the demons of murder. In the unimaginably distant past, when Shax himself had only just become a true demon lord, he started to believe that murder was a sin as unique as the 7 deadly sins. And in order to prove this, and also to experiment, because he's something of an abyssal scientist, he took 100 larvae that were formed from the souls of notorious murderers, and he inflicted on them the same tortures that they inflicted on their victims. When they apotheosized into demons, they became a new kind of demon. They were the very first Babaus. And from this, the Abyss learned how to make Babaus and seems to have accepted Shax's basic premise that murder is as unique a sin as something like wrath or lust, because now different kinds of murder produce different kinds of demons. We're going to do streams eventually where we just talk about regular demons that are not Balors, Balor Lords, or nascent demon lords, and also demon lords, of course. So we can talk about the different kinds of demons. But this is all like kind of significant lore stuff if you're just like, how do new demons get made? Normally it's actually kind of a random process by which someone just becomes a new kind of demon, but it's also possible for demon lords to engineer and hand create new kinds of demons themselves. This is one of the only instances where this has been talked about in great detail. Another instance where we get to learn about the origins of a kind of demon is that Nocula has been stated and confirmed in lore to have been the very first succubus. And boom, so you can see an instance of the Abyss just randomly creating a new kind of demon, and then the first member of that race becoming something very powerful. That's just like a big lore thing, I guess. So Shax himself, I like how Zala's like, so he's Shaquille O'Neal. Shax's appearance is that of like a humanoid looking person, at least if you're looking at the middle of this person. Shax's head is that of a stork. If you read the description, it says that of a dove. It's not. It's very that of a stork. I'm also pronouncing this word weirdly. I don't know how Americans say it. I'm going to type it in. It's S-T-O-K. It's the thing that delivers babies. Oh, God, I hope that my internet didn't go out. Okay, cool. It appears not to have. For a second, it looked like I was frozen. But he has the head of a stark. I don't know how you say it. And his head includes like stark white fur, not fur, feathers. God, I'm so good at English. It includes blood red eyes, which are apparently emotionless, like a psychopath or whatever. That's what it says, like in the lore. It wants you to get this opinion that he's like really edgy looking, but he just looks like a dumbass bird that is wearing a jacket. And he also has bird legs, but normally what he wears to cover the rest of his body, he has like human hands in most depictions of him, and he's wearing a jacket covered in knives. If anyone is curious, over on my Discord, I can post a picture of him later on after I have dinner. But he wields knives like an artist wields a brush, and in battle, if he manages to cut you, he can command the blood that bleeds from you. One of the like really big things that you should know about him is I'm also going to put his name there in the comment section if anyone wants to Google him and see what this dumbass looks like. He's just a big ass bird, and he's one of my favorite demon lords, but I also kind of hate him. He is like one of the more commonly worshipped demon lords in some worlds, but in Galarian he doesn't have like an enormous number of worshippers, which means that he doesn't have like hundreds of thousands of worshippers. But Galarian is a world that has probably at least as many sapient creatures as Earth does. So this is all very big. This is all very relative. Hey, Johnny, it's nice to see you. We're talking about demon lords and stuff. So if you want to hear edgy conversations about murders and shit, this is your place. He is just a big ass, dumbass bird, and if he cuts you, he can make it like really hurt. He can also like blind you with your blood, which doesn't make sense. One of his big things is he likes to like kidnap people and torture them, but like he has a really weird way of going about it. What he'll do is he'll capture you, he'll imprison you, and then he'll start torturing you, and he'll keep you alive as long as he can. And when he thinks you're about to die, he will cut out your eyes, and then he'll eat them because he's just edgy. That's all he is. There's nothing really special about him. He's a demon lord who invented murder demons and shit, and he likes eating eyes. He doesn't have much of an organized religious following, but he's worshipped by lots of different kinds of creatures. He's worshipped by clans of drow that are like really into murder and torture and shit. He's worshipped by aberrations like chokers, and he's also worshipped by his creations, the Babaus, as well as many lone serial killers and warmongers who are just like, I want a patron who will encourage me to be the biggest asshole that I can be and will give me cool, edgy powers that will allow me to poke people with my swords better. Jessica worships a lot of the creatures that I talk about, so don't mind her. The other day, she was on Twitter, and she mentioned that she was a worshiper of Ugathra now. So, you know, have at it. I mean, the final demon lord that we're going to talk about is a very interesting one, but she's probably the weakest one of all of the demon lords that we've talked about so far. Her name is Gorgunta. She is the demon lord of amphibians, boggards, which they're basically frog people, swamps, choles, and frogs and toads. I already put her name in the comment section so that way people can see it, even though I know y'all are a little bit behind me. There's like a little bit of a lag, but I'm not sure how strong it is. She rules over Mesophim, which is a continent-sized swamp that is floating on top of another abyssal lair. The abyssal lair that is floating on top of is known as Ishiar, which is the abyssal lair ruled by Dagon. Ishiar is a massive planet-sized ocean, and Dagon, who is like, oh, I love Dagon so much. I personally prefer Dagon in Pathfinder over Dagon in D&D, but both of them are very good. So this is a vast swamp, and it is home to lots of fiendish frogs, lots of frog moths, and also hairzu demons. Hairzu is another word that I just put in the comment section, not in the comment section, in the chat section. And Gorgunta herself is known to mate with many especially powerful hairzus. It's widely believed by the most like researched demonologists that odds are in life she was probably a hairzu who managed to jump from hairzu to nascent demon lord status and then up into true demon lord status. She is not the demon lord of crocodiles, but I bet crocodiles are probably fond of her. I'm trying to think of if like there's a specific demon lord of crocodiles, and none come to mind off the top of my head. But yeah. Let's see some of the other cool stuff about her. She is widely believed to be the origin of boggards, which, as I mentioned before, are frog-like humanoids. They're really assholey people who really like living in swamps, and they most commonly are believed to worship Gorgunta, but they actually worship a wide number of deities. It's just that any tribe of boggards that doesn't worship Gorgunta as a monotheistic deity is hunted down by other families of boggards that do worship Gorgunta. It's not clear if she herself is super jealous or if it's just that the boggards are like, nah, fam, you gotta worship Gorgunta, and if you don't, that's some heresy. So let's see. I'm looking through the comments. Can we get a demon lord who has civilizations on Thek? I don't know what Thek means in this context. I think that's a typo, but the other comments don't really clarify. So she normally manifests as a massive frog with many heads, many eyes, multiple mouths, and a whole bunch of acidic tongues that she can shoot at people. She's known to be able to croak like her animal worshippers can, and her croak is so potent that it's known to both her enemies and her allies as the Song of the Swamp. She has another form, and in her other form, her Song of the Swamp manifests a little bit differently, but in this form, those who hear it become obsessed with her, and they seek her out to offer themselves up either as mates or as meals. And if she does decide to nyam on them, she can place them on stasis inside of her stomachs, and then she can vomit them up later on, and they'll have undergone a Batrarian, a frog-like transformation. They'll become boggards, half-boggards, frogamoths, depending on the size of the creature in question, or even hairzoos if they are outsiders. And her other, like, really common form is that of a massive boggard queen. So instead of being a huge-ass mutated frog, she looks like a frog lady humanoid. In this particular form, she has a massive whip made from a frog's tongue, and it is actually I think in D&D parlance, the term is either animated or dancing. It's one of the two, and I think that there's like a minor difference between them. But she has a whip that can attack on its own, and in this form, I'm going to answer Tria's question in just a second. The answer is no. Unfortunately, there are no adventures in her swamps. There are actually better creatures for swamp type adventures that I'm more into. There's a type of creature called a marsh giant, which is a like mutated offshot of a hill giant that has lived in a swamp for like generations. They worship Dagon, and I really like them because they're just swamp people, and it's awesome. But yeah, there are unfortunately no adventures or adventure paths where you deal directly with worshippers of Gorgunta that I can think of off the top of my head. There are some where you deal with followers of Dagon. There is an adventure path called the Carrion Crown, which is horror themed, and each one of them you deal with like a different type of generic monster. I'm not going to dive like too deeply into it, but among other things, you deal with liches, you deal with Frankenstein, basically you deal with werewolves, vampires, and like Lovecraftian peeps. But if you fight Gorgunta, or if you encounter her in her marsh queen form as opposed to her queen frog form, the way that her song works is it's said to be a little bit different, but it's not super clear how this is different in practice. In this form, if you hear her song and you succumb to it, which is probably like if you fail a wisdom saving throw, you become her worshiper and her agents. It's not really clear how stylistically that's different from wanting to be bored by her. But I mean, I'm being a little bit too picky, I guess. Her boggard worshippers see her as a true goddess, and they view her as the originator of their kind. It's not super clear in lore if that's actually true, but it's entirely possible that it is. There is some lore that suggests that the very first boggards were birthed by Gorgunta after she mated with Dagon. I can't remember exactly what resource it is. I think it's the Book of the Damned, but it might actually be Demons Revisited, where they talk about hairzoos and they mention her just because she's fond of hairzoos. But her boggart worshippers see her as a true goddess. They perform human sacrifice to her. Not humans specifically, but like they perform humanoid sacrifice to her. So that way they can gain her attention and her favor. And those of them that she like really likes, she can theoretically go and mate with. But generally speaking, the way the boggart society is set up is that it's generally a theocracy. And if you are a priest and you're a boggart, if you're encountered by player characters, you're probably a worshiper of Gorgunta. If you just come across a priest that is a boggart, you can probably fairly assume that they're worshippers of Gorgunta, unless the entire point of like that encounter is that you want to help out those of them that worship other creatures. Boggards are generally, I think their alignment is generally believed to be chaotic evil, but there are other creatures that they could worship that are not evil. There are creatures like Desna and Aristil, who, if you want to be like a good boggart, which would be an interesting character concept, would probably make for appealing deities free to worship. Aristil is the god of farming, communities, and families, and Desna is the goddess of exploration, dreams, and stars. Both of them have other things that they're in charge of too. They're true deities, so they have like all sorts of things that they are into. Those are the big things. One of the big things that I'm gonna talk about like later on is the idea of like pantheistic demon / evil deity worship. And one of the first examples of this that people can come across like in lore is the idea that they are that you can come across someone who lives in a swamp who worships both Mastima and Gorgunta. Mastima is a demon lord of deception, cruelty, and covens who's worshipped by witches, hags, and eunuchs. And it's very interesting that some people worship both of them. And the reason why that's interesting is that there's no lore that suggests that they're friends. In fact, the lore for Gorgunta states that she actively dislikes the idea that she is worshipped alongside Mastima, as if they're homies or something. I can talk a little bit about Mastima. Mastima is a very interesting demon lord who really hates, she's a misandrist. She hates men. She really likes being worshipped by hags and by covens of witches. She grants people her magic to go and do like evil shit. And she has a plane that's just the woods. Like her realm is just a lot of woods. And I think if I remember correctly, I'm going to talk about her in detail at a later time. She also has like a big house where she like vibes and she does stuff. One of her favorite practices is to like set a couple up, and then she will possess the woman, and she will try to murder like the night that they get married. When they are in their like honeymoon stage and they're getting ready to consummate their marriage, she will possess the lady in the marriage, and she will try to murder the man and then murder herself. And then she will try to, actually, I might be getting this wrong because there's a shadow demon who does that. And it's really weird how common, like how similar that is. I think with Mastima, what she does is she will kill the lady in the marriage, and then she will consummate the marriage with the man while using illusions to make the man think that she is the person that he thought she was, and then she will like castrate the man. If the man doesn't die, apparently later on she will send the like child that she gave birth to over to the man to try and kill them. And it's really like one of the reasons why that sticks out in my mind is that it's so specific. Most demon lords don't have like an example of like a super specific behavior like that in their entries in the Book of the Damned. But in Mastima's, that is like, they're just like, hey, this is the ritual, and now you have a half demon baby, and if you don't die from castration, have fun dealing with your kid. It's really weird. It's weird how it's so fucking petty, and like the Book of the Damned goes out of its way to be like, here's this thing that you should know about her. I'm trying to think of if there's like any other examples of this. One of the other like really big examples that I can think of something like this is that Giselda, who is the demon lord of evil werewolves, she has this really weird hatred of good aligned werewolves, and her followers are just like, hey, if we can get her, if we can sacrifice a good werewolf to her, that's really cool, and Giselda will be really happy. Giselda is also one of those evil assholes that I talked about earlier, who I like how Capri is commenting, and Daryl is like, Capri would love her. Love it here. Jessica, I already said what happened to the castrated person's partner. Mastima murders her. This lady hates everyone equally. She's an asshole. But Giselda is one of the demon lords that I mentioned earlier who has like a habit of like yoinking villages. She is the demon lord of werewolves and stuff. And what she will do is she will have her followers commit like they'll use like magic and illusions to trick entire villages of people into their abyssal realm. And listen, if y'all don't believe me, let me see if I can find it on the wiki, because that's probably the easiest way to show y'all what it is. Let's see. Okay, here it is. Aha, it is here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put it in this so that way y'all can see it yourselves. I wasn't making it up. It says, like, word for word, one of Mastima's favorite cruel tricks is murdering a young woman the night before her wedding, then taking her form, marrying the groom, and sleeping with him. Then after the deed is done, the trickster assumes her true and terrifying form, castrating the man and disappearing into the night. The final part of this heinous trick comes years later when the deformed bastard offspring of this unlucky union returns to murder their fathers. I told you! I wasn't making this up. That's so weird that I wouldn't be able to make it up if I hadn't seen it somewhere else. But Giselda is the demon lord of werewolves and also some other stuff, mostly werewolves. And listen, it has resources, y'all. But she's the demon lord of werewolves and I guess probably evil dogs. And her realm is just like a giant. It's just like a giant plain on which there are different like villages, and in the villages her followers are able to just go buck wild and like hunt people down. Zora has a similar realm. Zora is the demon lord of vampires. I actually let me see what Giselda like all of her stuff is. I'll also go ahead and share her page so that way y'all can see it. But yeah, so her realm is called the Moon Bog, and let me see what it says about it. Okay, so it doesn't have villages, but what it does say is Giselda dwells in the abyssal realm known as the Moon Bog, a terrifying land of moors and bogs under a constant, ever-present moon. Giselda's minions stalk the Moon Bog with humanoid inhabitants from throughout the material plane for their mistress, lycanthropes, and her anti-paladins to hunt. So basically, it's a giant bog and moor over which there's a moon forever, and werewolves are allowed to go buck wild. Zura's realm, who is the demon lord, also Giselda is the demon lord of desolation, the moon, and werewolves. Zora, on the other hand, I'm going to go ahead and pull up her thing so that way I can be sure that it's right. Zora rules a mountainous abyssal realm known as Nesh. Nesh has a large number of villages inhabited by captured humanoids harvested from the material plane. They are, for the most part, unaware that they dwell deep in the abyss, except for the leaders, who are rewarded by Zora's minions to keep their truth hidden. And this is a place where vampires and stuff can appear whenever they want. They can snack on a few delicious people, and then they can just fuck off. Zora herself is an ancient Ataltani queen who ruled a mortal. She was like a queen before Earthfall, and what happened with her was she died before Earthfall. She went into the abyss. She became a succubus vampire. Her sinfulness was apparently like that powerful. She was such an evil asshole that she was able to skip all sorts of steps and she just immediately became a succubus vampire, and she eventually became a demon lord, and now she manifests as an occasionally sexy lady who can like transform into her vampire form and yum on people's faces. She is just a huge dickhead. In the full lore in depth, if you read her article, if you read like her section of the Book of the Damned, it talks about how she ruled before Earthfall, and when Earthfall happened and destroyed the Atsultani Empire, she was already a demon lord, which talks both about how long ago the Atsultani ruled a good portion of Galarian, and also like both how quickly she was able to become a demon lord and for just how long Atsultani was vibing, like Atsultan, the empire. Yeah. Those are like some of the big demon lords and stuff. I'm trying to think of like some of the other really powerful ones. One of the really powerful demon lords who does not really matter in Galarian is Orcus, who is a demon lord of intelligent undead. He is also the demon lord of wrath and necromancy and undeath. His preferred form of undead are liches, which are the evil wizard assholes that we've talked about in the past, who have the phylacteries, which is basically a box where you put your soul. And if you kill their centuries, if they're greater liches, they will just reform and they'll be back to say fuck you. I hope that my internet didn't go out, because now I see that I am frozen. It's frozen for me, but it's also not frozen. There I am. Cool. There was a really weird blip. But yeah, so Orcus is the demon lord of wrath, and he is one of the only like major demon lords who people in Galarian don't really care about, because he's not super interested in Galarian. He has some worshippers, lots of liches worship him, but lots of liches also worship other peeps over like Urgathoa, who we've talked about in the past. We had a whole stream about her. I'm glad that I'm back, because it was really weird. I'm trying to see if there's like any big stuff that I've missed in my notes. I actually think that I hit everything. I'm pretty sure that I hit everything. That's really cool. It's been like an hour and 5 minutes. Normally this is the section where we vibe, and I think vibing is cool. One of the next really big, ultra powerful entity streams that I want to do is I want to talk about the Four Horsemen. I don't want to talk, like, I'm going to do videos where I talk about them individually, but I also want to do one stream where I'm just like, these are the Four Horsemen as a concept. This is what worshiping them looks like. Boom, boom, boom. These are like the big points. I'll also probably talk about the history of Abaddon at that point. For those of you who don't remember, Abaddon is the place where neutral evil people go. It is just a really shitty place to go, and if you become a petitioner over there, I think what you're called is the Hunted. I'm not saying that super distinctly right now. I am going to check to see if I was correct, but I'm pretty sure it's the Hunted. Yep, I went onto the wiki and I just pulled it up. If you are in Abaddon and you're a petitioner, you're known as the Hunted. You have to survive for a while before you become a daemon. Typically, you have to start to prey on like another person before you become a daemon. And then once you do, you can ascend up the hierarchy, and you will be able to... Let me see where true neutrals go, because I'm actually not entirely sure. That's a good question. I don't know that much about like the neutral people. I will look it up in a second. But if you become a daemon, you can become one of the Four Horsemen eventually. It just takes a really long time, unless you become like one of the Thano daemons, who are the deacons of they're like the special chosen race of Charon, and Charon has never been replaced. So if you become one of them, you're probably not going to become a horseman. If you become something else, like one of the peeps who serve Saruzirel, the Horseman of War, maybe it's entirely possible. Let me see what the true neutral What are the true neutral ones? That is really odd. Let's see. I think the true neutral ones might go to the Boneyard and become the Espodes, but I'm not entirely sure. I'm trying to look because I want to be sure. Because that's actually a good question. Let me see. True neutral. Yeah. If you're lawful neutral, you go to Axis. I don't remember what those people are called though, but for the true neutral, that's a really good question. The horsemen are daemons; they're not demons. Daemon and demon, two separate things. I know the naming conventions are dumb. I wasn't the person who chose this. I would not have chosen to call one race demons and another race daemons. Really annoying. I'm trying to see what the neutral where do the neutral peeps go? They also might just become the dead, which are the generic petitioners of the Boneyard. They are the peeps who eventually become psychopomps, which we've talked about before. Psychopomps are the spirits of the dead that vibe with Pharasma, and the highest form of them is a psychopomp usher. I'm going to look that up and I'm going to answer it on a different day eventually. Also, I hate daemons matter so much in the lore of Pathfinder, but they have such a dumb name, and also a lot of their lore is really confusing and doesn't make a lot of sense. One of the big questions with daemons is like, hey, what is the Oneo daemon up to? I'm gonna go ahead and put that in here too, just so people can see how it's spelled. That was the original horseman of the apocalypse. He was the original supreme lord of the daemons, and his whole thing was he was vibing with the first four horsemen, but eventually he created the Estrella Demons, which are they're really terrifying creatures. They're supposed to be shark-like. They're supposed to be, but they're not. It's really weird. They're these ultra powerful daemons that can just outright nyam on a soul. If they kill you, your soul doesn't go anywhere. If they just eat it outright, which is one of the things that makes them super powerful. Daemon is not an acceptable name for a human, Capri. But once the Oneo daemon made the first Astra daemons, the original set of four horsemen were just like, that motherfucker is gonna replace us, and they decided that was unacceptable. And they went and they captured the Oneo daemon, working together, and they just put him in a fucking house somewhere, super far away. But they couldn't kill him, even though it looks like they probably wanted to kill him. And because of that, he's just like, well, I guess I'm stuck here. This sucks. And he is the actual, he's probably the true god of Abaddon. And some of the reasons why Abaddon are so fucking weird are widely believed to have been because of him, if you know who he is. The four horsemen know where he is for sure. Some other people, the most powerful other people and some of the most knowledgeable other peeps in the multiverse, probably know that he exists. They definitely know that he existed. It's not super clear if they know that he still exists. But he's trapped somewhere. He's being told to fuck off forever. And and now he is being stuck, and his power is being used to power Abaddon, probably, or to power the four horsemen, maybe. Only Charon was there back when he was first told to fuck off. We're gonna talk about him extensively when we get over to our Pathfinder stream on Abaddon. We actually might just do our next stream on Abaddon just by itself. And we'll also talk about the horsemen and stuff. So I couldn't find for sure where the true neutral peeps went. I'm looking for it. I'm going to have an answer for you for sure on our next stream. I'll be like, this is a question that I want to answer. And now you know what the answer is. The Maelstrom is chaotic neutral. Yeah, it's chaotic neutral. So I just checked because I was like, is it chaotic or is it neutral? Is it Axis or is that lawful neutral? Damn it, that is lawful neutral. I'm doing my best. But yeah, I think that's probably where we're going to go ahead and end it today. So that way I can go and get like dinner and stuff. But yeah, this was a fun stream. I know way more about Demon Lords than any one person should. So I'm glad I was able to just vomit that knowledge at y'all for an hour and 12 minutes. There are so many Demon Lords that we are definitely going to do streams where we like talk about them. In the future, I'm not going to dump so much lore at you, so we'll be able to be like, all right, let's tackle these Demon Lords. We might do it alphabetically, but I really like Zura and I don't want to end with her, so we probably won't do it alphabetically. But yeah, I hope everyone has a good night. We are going to go ahead and end the stream. Bye-bye, everybody.